Justin Guard this Sunday for a Vikings watch party unlike any other at the all-new Hop House in Mystic Lake Casino. Don't miss 1 minute of the action on the giant wall TV displays. Plus enjoy best seats, food and beverages, trivia, prize giveaways all game long, hosted by JG. Party kicks off at noon. Get all the details, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
This isn't really, at least from my vantage point, a complicated scenario here as it pertains to how to view the 2025 Golden Gophers season. We've laid this out extensively on Sunday sermons, and we may do so again this week, especially depending on how the Gophers fare tonight at the University of Oregon. But I think Chip Scoggins did a pretty good job of distilling what is at stake this evening and the significance of this game. The Gophers have 3 games left. Last game of the year, they host Wisconsin. The week before that, they're at Northwestern, I think actually technically at Wrigley Field against Northwestern. And this week, tonight, against Oregon. Only one of those 3 games represents a litmus test that, to me, will distinguish will sort of determine whether this has been a good season or not. Can't be called a bad season on the number of victories. I get it. But we pointed this out a while ago, and Chip got into this. People don't like hearing it. They do the, it's not our fault who we've played. It's not our fault how those particular teams are faring. The Gophers are 6-3 overall, 4-2 in the Big Ten. But it's undeniable that when the 4 Big Ten teams you've beaten have a combined Big Ten record of 6-21, that's not going to get anybody's attention in trying to convince people that this has been a really good season, right? You've had, up till now, I think you could argue, 4 chances to do that. And you failed in 3 of those 4. The first would be at Cal. Not necessarily a litmus test because they're a great team. In fact, they've turned out to be a pretty ordinary team. But I've put that early as one of those games that if you are going to give yourself a chance to have a special season, you just have to win. You just have to put it on the win column. And Minnesota lost there 27-14. Your second chance was in Columbus. Maybe unfair to even call that a chance, given how good Ohio State continues to be. I will still maintain that the Gophers reached a level of non-competitiveness in that game that should have been alarming to people at 42-3. Despite that, I think we scored, didn't we? I think the first time we had the ball, we drove down for a field goal, and people were like, hey. And that was the extent of our ability to compete. The third opportunity was hosting Nebraska. Passed that test with flying colors. At the time, Nebraska was ranked 25th. I don't know what they're ranked now, but it was a thorough demolition of the Huskers. Offense and defense, especially at the line of scrimmage, very good. 24-6, again, was that final. And the fourth litmus test opportunity at Iowa the following week. And as we said after the Nebraska game, expectations here are such that I don't think many of us were demanding the Gophers go to Iowa and win the game. But it should not have been too much to ask that be a competitive game. And I believe at one point in the second quarter, the competitive scores were Gophers 1 yard total offense, Iowa 31 points. Final score is 41-3. Not a competitive performance at all in what is now, I believe, for the head coach, year 9. This is, I think, your 5th and last opportunity to at least give the sense that pretty damn good season. Your last chance to show people that when the head coach keeps saying, as Scoggins points out, about the Gophers, this is a really good football team. You can say that all you want, but it's not a really good football team if you lose this game, especially if you lose it in non-competitive fashion. And that's, again, the standards we're playing to these days. Scoggins, at the end of his piece, doesn't even say that the Gophers have to win. He only writes, it's not too much to ask for the Gophers to be in the fight. Bye week for the Gophers. Oregon, short week, traveling across the country, or at least halfway across the country, because they played Saturday in Iowa City. Admit it, yes, they're hosting. It's a tough place to play. We grant all of that point. But if you want me to take this season seriously beyond, we're happy for you that you beat Rutgers and you beat Purdue and you came from behind to beat Michigan State, and and we assume you're going to beat Wisconsin this year, and even win at Northwestern, which would be a little better, but still nothing special. You have to, at the very least, finally compete in a game against a good opponent. Period. End of story. There's just no way around that. And, again, the problem with the Gopher apologists is that they'll turn this into, I don't know who you want here. It sounds like you want them fired. They play that game. They create straw man argument that if you dare to evaluate or criticize a given season, that you're all but trying to run a guy out of town. And obviously the debate becomes easy then. But we should be able to do both. And as I mentioned, and as Scoggins mentions in this piece, 9 years in, and that's not a good look. If you go to Oregon and get wiped after getting wiped previously in Iowa and against Ohio State, who's kidding who? It's an okay season. You can end up with the fat number of victories because you started the season with Buffalo and Northwestern State or whatever the hell that team was that we beat 66-0. But I don't think we're going to be fooled at all. So let's see. Maybe they put together the best game of the season. That's probably what they will need. I think Oregon's good. I don't think Oregon is quite as good as people think, but they're good, and they're at home where they're very, very tough. That's considered a pretty tough place to play. But let's see it. The really good team stuff isn't just the ability to come from behind against the Michigan States and the Rutgers and the Purdues of the world. Better to win than to lose. That was another thing I'm hearing now is, well, the truth is this team isn't as talented as last year's team or the last couple. And I'm thinking, if you want to accept that premise, then I guess the comeback question would be, well, why not? 9 years in. Why don't we have more talent? I mean, I've actually heard some people try to turn this into PJ should receive credit for what he's gotten out of this team that's not all that talented. And I'm going, man, we really are, even by Minnesota standards, lowering the standards to a degree that I don't even begin to understand. But it's beautiful for the head coach because apparently it's going to never be his fault. It's going to be, well, if he doesn't have the talent, that's not up to him. And if he has the talent, well, it's really not fair to expect this team to compete with Ohio State, University of Iowa, or later tonight, Oregon. So this is a great opportunity, and I would say the last opportunity this team has to get anybody's attention. In a town where there's casual interest in the Gophers, but it's never going to reach anything like critical mass unless you have the occasional game where you at the least are competitive in a game like tonight, and at most you actually dare to win the game.
Here's a text we got to the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line that just explains it all. 651 guy. 8-win season is overachieving, and it's not really close.
There it is.
Small NIL program. Let's face it, what kid out of state wants to come up here and play football? 8 is overachieving, period. This message brought to you by the PJ Fleck Foundation.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like I said, that on that basis, why would PJ Fleck ever want to leave here? And he probably won't as a result of that. The issue is, do individuals have the ability to actually watch games and then evaluate within a given game? Because, again, I don't think I was demanding that the Gophers beat Ohio State. I wasn't demanding that they beat Iowa. Even though you could argue every once in a while, more often than PJ has, they should. Even on the road. They weren't even in these games. Not even close to being in these games. And if you can't see that, then, spend more time on Gopher Hole. That's all I can tell you. Because I'm assuming that they'll be more than happy to say, man, you look at it's, and it's always, by the way, again, the number of victories now that some of us grew up with a football season that was 10 games long. And so we still have these stupid comparisons being made about number of victories in Gopher history when now we're playing on a minimum of 2 more games a season. This isn't complicated. Even I can do that math, that you got a greater chance to win 8 games if you play 12. And part of the evaluation should be, how many Big Ten West titles did we win? The answer is 0. The question should be, well, where are we in the Big Ten standings? That should be part of the conversation. PJ was the guy who said, be delusional this year. And implied in that was, why can't we be the Indiana of this season? Now we're supposed to forget all that, apparently, because it's not convenient for the apologists who want, apparently, another contract extension. That, man, you see the talent he's got? It's unbelievable what he's accomplished with this team. Okay, go right ahead. Nobody on this show is calling for his head. You might be. I'm not. Not even close to doing that. But we should be able to evaluate. And what we've said is, if you're a program like this, most of us are realistic enough to understand that you're not going to be going for Big Ten titles very often, right? But the idea is to do more often than what we do, what has happened over the last 30 years at Iowa, at Wisconsin, at Northwestern, hell, at Purdue for a while. Maximizing, when you have something, maximizing it. And we got close to that the year we beat Penn State, but then we couldn't finish that job. Ultimately, that was a very good season. Not a good season. I call it a very good season. But it was, you look back on it, was there more meat on the bone? And that's what we tend to do. And this year, we haven't even, like I said, there hasn't even been a chance to discuss, did he run too much in this game or pass too much in this game? They've been so non-competitive against several litmus test opponents that it hasn't even mattered. So they have another opportunity to do something about that tonight. They really do. I've always said the players have the last word. They have that opportunity tonight. Again, it's on the road, but again, Oregon is on a short week. They allegedly, and I didn't even realize this according to Chip, they're down like about 8 wide receivers. So let's at least make them sweat. How's that for a mantra? How's that for a demand? I'm not demanding a victory. I'm not even demanding that it was a 1-point game. How about making them sweat? Make Oregon work for it a little bit. I'm sure that'll be turned into, there goes Barreiro again, demanding that the Gophers win every game they play and the head coach to make the national championship game and finish first, second, or third in the Big Ten. So fire away. Bonus bucks right now?
Yes, the Fan and 2 Minute Junk Truck want to give you a shot to win those bonus bucks for the National Cash Contest. Just head to KFAN.com. Keyword cash this hour. Keyword cash, KFAN.com. Keyword cash. Bonus Bucks is back on KFAN. We have 9 chances for you to win $1,000 every weekday. It's every hour from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. To enter keywords and learn more, head to KFAN.com. Bonus Bucks is presented by Two Men and a Junk Truck.
Let's revisit, Brett Blakemore, the lock of the week for Gerby, because I think I did a pretty poor job of explaining how folks can participate. So instead of going to KFAN.com, you go to the iHeartRadio app, right? You find KFAN on the app. Mm-hmm. That's where you'll find the microphone logo or insignia, whatever you want to call it. That's what you click on. Then you offer up Gerby's Lock of the Week was or is, and then you are eligible to potentially win a pair of tickets to see the Vikings take on the Monsters of the Midway this Sunday. So don't do KFAN.com. Go to the app if you already have it, iHeartRadio. Type in KFAN, and you tell me that's what will come up, right? The microphone insignia will come up, and then you'll have that opportunity. I hope for all our marketing people, they'll give folks still another chance to get in on the fun before this show is done. A number of people have been asking about that because a lot of people want to go to the ball game. The apologists keep coming in, and I'm not at all surprised. Here's the new one this is supposed to make people feel better about what hasn't happened here and a couple other places in the Big Ten. Well, we got to get, it turned at Indiana, but they got Mark Cuban. Here's what you need to know about the Mark Cuban angle. Mark Cuban only now has started, he just talked about this a while ago, offering up, when it comes to the football program, big money contributions. In other words, Cuban, to a certain extent, has jumped on a bandwagon in which a lot of the winning a year ago was already established, and even some this year. So if it makes you feel better to think that this has got nothing to do with coaching, nothing to do with vision at all, it just has to do with getting a fat cat who will help us steal players. Kurt Signetti has been stealing players or getting the right players before Mark Cuban, an IU guy, has spent any kind of significant money on the program. Is it help that he's doing it now? Yes. But this is how people placate themselves. They medicate themselves in, we can't, who's our Mark? We don't have a Mark Cuban. So instead of just acknowledging that something extraordinary is happening in Indiana for a lot of different reasons that may make it mean that it could happen a lot of places, including here, if you get the right person and the right, the right goulash put together, you cook up the right kind of stew. It's that's little one because somebody said little 8-win season, overachieving, not really close, small NIL program. When a kid out of state wants to come up here, and what kid wants to come up here and play football from out of state? You can live in that world, but we have example after example over the last 30 years, even before NIL, of programs that, at least for a stretch, when they had something going out of the ordinary, maximized it. Once upon a time, went to Rose Bowls with it, which we have not done. I'm continually amazed at how people, this is how you, like I say, you medicate yourself into, I'm not going to get that frustrated because there's no way we can do anything about it. It's just we are what we are, and that's the end of the story. We said it at the start of the season. I'll stand by it. Star Tribune had a great headline. We already know and have acknowledged that PJ Fleck has raised the floor for this program. Undeniable. Because I was here for a lot of the seasons when the floor was rock bottom, baby, to quote Kevin McHale. He's raised that floor. There's no question about that. Undeniable, and that's part of what you want a coach to do. The question was, how much can he raise the ceiling? And I just think 9-10 years in, we now know the answer to that question. Just a little. Not a lot. And if you want to go with the 8 victories, you have to factor in how many games are being played now compared to the 10-game seasons, and even who you're beating. And how often you're pulling off the kind of upset like they did against Penn State. But how many years ago was that at this point? So, again, you can talk yourself out of anything if that's the direction you want to go. I just don't think I don't think it's facing reality, but I think some people don't want to face reality, or they want to say, well, that's there, and they got their billionaire taking care of things, when everybody I've talked to there at Indiana University say, yeah, they're loving Cuban's help financially at this point, but it wasn't like when Curt Cignetti got there. Cuban was like, let me get my checkbook. How much do you need? It didn't work that way. He's helped on some other stuff, for sure. But it's not the proper sequence. You can make it that if it's easier for you to finesse why it's happening one place and this doesn't have to be the place where it's happening to that degree. Break, bottom of the hour. Let's get back to Vikings conversation. Ben Goessling is picking the Vikings to rebound with a victory over the Chicago Bears. We'll have him explain what he thinks is going to happen or why he is picking the Vikings to win. Does he view this again as another one of those plant your feet moments for the Vikings where there might not be a tomorrow if they do not get it done at home? All of that and more with Goessling next.
Time now for the Vikings Report on the Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings wide receiver Adam Thielen joins Dan Barreiro next.
The Fan and the Vikings are teaming up for Toys for Tots. Join us live at Shields in Eden Prairie Tuesday, December 2nd, 5:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. for our annual broadcast presented by Unreal. Bring a toy, spread some joy, and if you're one of the first 50 donors to each show, you'll score a sweet KFAN Unreal Winter Beanie. Full details, kfan.com/toys.
Standard Heating and Air Conditioning brings us Ben Goessling every week. He joins now via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. You have predicted via StarTribune.com that the Vikings will indeed bounce back in a close game, 24-21 over the Bears. Guardsy and I were talking about this for the TV show, and here's what's interesting about this game to me, above and beyond who wins, who loses. I'm getting the sense that Bears fans who've not had much to cheer about, they've had a lot of really crappy seasons, are sitting at 6-3. It might be a phony 6-3, but it's 6-3, which hasn't happened in a while, and that they're coming to town to try to take over the I was about to say the Dome, the People's Stadium as much as possible. And if the Vikings don't do what you're predicting that you think they will do in a close game, I think there's a recipe here for a lot of bad feeling in that building and things turning quite a bit, right? This is a game that the Vikings have to be very careful about, do they not?
Yes, I would agree with that. I think the powder keg last week against the Ravens was pretty well packed, I would say. There was quite a bit of gunpowder in that thing, and I think another loss like that one would kind of set it off, especially in the division, because they really cannot afford to lose another NFC game. They can't afford to fall further back in the NFC North. But more than that, I think they just can't afford to look like they are a step behind a team that they've, been fairly confident and had very good reason to be confident that they could beat for a long time. I mean, Kevin O'Connell, I believe, has only lost to the Bears once in his career as the Vikings head coach. And that's been the team that they've been the best against. I mean, it always used to be the Lions, but that has certainly changed. And the Bears have been the team the Vikings have said, well, we can usually get two against them, and it's not anything to worry about. So these two teams are always interesting to me because they went through the rebuild process at exactly the same time. They were talking to the same people for the GM jobs in 2022. They hired head coaches at the same time. They took quarterbacks in the same draft. So there's kind of this parallel track thing between the Vikings and Bears. Obviously, have taken different approaches to the rebuild, or the competitive rebuild, I guess Quasi Mensa would call it. But it is a fascinating kind of side-by-side comparison. And, yeah, even if the Bears are 6-3 because they've beaten a lot of bad teams, they're 6-3.
Yeah.
And I think they will come to town feeling a little different than they have in the past.
Key injury report stuff I want to get to here early. So Grenard is out, correct? Jonathan Grenard and Ryan Kelly. That's both official. Those designations are both official, correct?
Correct.
What does the Grenard loss do? How significant in your mind is that?
I think it's a big deal. I think he has certainly been their most consistent pass rusher, and he's also a guy that teams don't like to run at very much. I think when Dallas Turner went into that game last week, you saw the Ravens, I should say, take advantage of that a little bit and try to exploit him a little bit in the run game. So Grenard not being there, I do think is a big deal. I think they need Dallas Turner to show up and have a significant contribution to this game. We'll see a lot of Eric Wilson. We'll obviously see Andrew Van Ginkel, but they need their second first-round pick last year that they spent so much to go up and get to start to make some plays and have an impact. And I think especially in a game with Caleb Williams, you need all of the bodies you can to chase him, because we've seen it every time they face him. He can get out and make things happen with his feet or, make throws on the run. And I think being able to pursue him effectively without giving him escape lanes is going to be a big part of this too. So Bernard has had some moments this year where he's missed, and certainly has had a lot of pressures where he wasn't able to finish the deal, or kind of over pursues and misses the chance to bring in a ball carrier or a quarterback down. But he is their most consistent source of pressure, and I think not having him is I think it hurts. I think this is a big loss for them, and I think they'll still. I have predicted them to win, obviously, so I think they'll still find ways to get it done, but I think that's a lot to come back from when you don't have him.
All right, on the other side of the injury ledger, I believe T.J. Edwards is out for the Bears, which I do think hurts them. Brisker is listed, defensive back Brisker, Jaquan Brisker is listed as questionable. Now, Jalen Johnson, who's been out for extended period, is listed as questionable with the groin, has just started practicing. Is the feeling that the Bears might be able to use him as soon as this game, or what are we hearing there?
I guess I would be a little surprised if he's back that soon. When he had, I think, a limited practice today on Friday, the first day that they opened up his window, that would seem like they want to take him through a little more work before they're confident enough to say he can go play a full game. I guess I would be surprised by that one. And then Brisker, we'll see. He didn't practice Wednesday, Thursday this week, and just was limited on Friday as well. And they really have not had those two guys together on the field the entire season, I don't think.
That's true.
I think they were missing those guys for that week one game too. So I think that is significant if they get either of them back. I just don't know if the timetable, especially for Jalen Johnson, would be quite suitable for that to happen for this one.
Well, and that's where I'm not anyone who's going to discount injuries. They do factor in. But it's where I tire of constantly making about who we have missing or any one team has missing, because we don't spend as much time in this market on significant players that other teams have been missing much, if not all, of the season. It's part of the deal, and the Bears have had those issues as well. Some injuries, all injuries, I should say, are equal, but I think it's just a losing game. At some point, you either deal with it or you don't deal with it, and I think we have to accept that a little more and understand that we're not alone when it comes to injuries. Some teams might be less lucky than others in a given season, especially at the quarterback position. Obviously, when you're the guy you wanted to have out there from the beginning has only been out there part of the time. But I think that's where we got to not fall into that trap about, we didn't have our offensive line for a while. The Bears, whatever their defense is, they've never had their complete defense together, even more so than you can say with the Vikings.
Right. Yeah. It is a fact of life in the NFL. The sport has 100% injury rate. Every team is going to deal with it at certain points of the year. Even guys that don't miss games by November, most of them are playing through something. If you see a guy on the field on Sunday, and I've learned this over the years of, hey, this guy doesn't look like he's as nimble as we thought he was. What's going on with him? It's like the first question you should ask is, okay, when did he get hurt? Because that's probably the case more often than we appreciate around the league. And yes, it is part of the deal. It's part of what every team goes through. There are certain years, I think, where teams are more fortuitous with it than others. And I think 2024 was one of those years for the Vikings where they were fairly healthy most of the way through it. And it seems like sometimes that rubber band snaps back a little bit the next year, and you kind of go through it. But it seems like every team is going to have a moment at some point where there's a lot of injuries in one spot, or it's just hard to manage them all. It is just it's a violent game, and that's part of what you deal with and what you sign up for when you play it, because the rosters are not unlimited, and you have to figure out how to manage through it.
Exactly it. You raise in your scouting report, I think, another decent storyline in this game. The Bears have used three wide receivers a lot, and that means testing the depth that the Vikings have available at defensive back, correct?
Yeah, they've spread things out a lot more since they came back from their bye week. It's been a lot more three receiver stuff. I think basically about 2/3 of the time they are in three receiver sets. And when you look at the Vikings secondary, where they are going to be without Jeff Okudah, certainly, and then Byron Murphy has struggled a little bit this year, and Isaiah Rodgers has, after the electric start, has not been quite as good the last few weeks either. So I would imagine that group's going to get tested. Theo Jackson will come back from that concussion on Sunday, so they'll be back to their three safeties if they want to use them how they like to do it. But this is a team that I think has struggled with mobile quarterbacks, both because they can run and because they can extend plays. We've seen that happen. Certainly Jalen Hurts did it to them. I think Justin Herbert probably did a little bit as well, where if your corners have to cover for 5 or 6 seconds,
sure,
it becomes a lot more difficult. And every team deals with that. But I think you've seen this secondary get picked on in some of those situations. And I think the way the Bears have gone about things in recent weeks means the Vikings are going to spend a lot of time trying to match to spread sets and playing with a lot of defensive backs. And when you get into that group with the depth being as big of a concern as it is, I don't think that part of the matchup is one that will be terribly easy for them to handle.
Let me play my broken record because I don't want to disappoint anyone who is tired of me talking about the running game. But the numbers I have in front of me, and I'm sure you have more, but the numbers I have in front of me is that the Bears' defense against the run ranks 25th in yards allowed per game, a stat that can be a little misleading depending on the nature of games, but also 29th in yards per attempt in the league at 5.2 yards a carry they're giving up, which would seem to indicate to me, again, this might be the ultimate litmus test that if the head coach is still going to stay stubborn about, well, 1st and 15, you can't do much on the ground, or I love that the pass on 3rd and 1 because we got one-on-one coverage, that he's just never going to go away from what he thinks his philosophy is going to be, because this would seem to me, leaving aside the struggles for his quarterback in terms of, passing consistency, that this would be the game of all games where you say, not on every play, but we got to have a steady diet of runs. We got to challenge them with runs, especially make them prove they can stop our run if it's going good. What do you think?
Yeah, it certainly is a litmus test for that. I think this is one where running the ball is an effective way to go about things. And I asked him about that a little bit this week of just, do you need the easy button sometimes for J.J. McCarthy? Because we've seen it in games where he starts to run a little hot and he gets fired up and he's competitive, and we get that. But some of the plays that he makes, I think his accuracy suffers a little bit, and you see him probably needing to just have a play where he's turning around and handing the ball off, and it's a little bit of a breather for him. And O'Connell said there certainly are moments for that, but I think a couple of things tend to move them in the direction where running the ball, and I said it at the beginning of the season, I thought they'd be more committed to it than they've been. So, I will admit that I probably underestimated the degree to which they would throw it as well. But when they've got so many package plays where they have a pass option in there if they like it, and they have some RPO stuff in there now, there are times where even if a run is called, they have kind of the escape hatch to get out of it if they see a look they like better. And I think the general principle that the head coach ascribes to is if you can get chunk plays, you're going to be better off than if you're trying to just go downfield. The problem with that is if you're not getting the chunk plays, or worse, you're creating turnovers in the chunk plays, it doesn't do you any good either. So a lot of this is kind of this discussion of what's better on a global level if you're talking about thousands of snaps. We talk about this in baseball all the time, and then it becomes difficult in the playoffs where it's not thousands of snaps or thousands of at-bats anymore. It's one moment that you have to decide. So the small sample size in football, I think, makes this a little tricky as well. And
it does.
I think they generally say passing is better, it's more efficient, but there are times where there's probably a little more nuance to it. And this may be one of those moments where we get a sense of if they're going to do it or not, because you're right. There is an opportunity to do it here, and it'll be interesting to see how they go about it.
The part that I've never understood with him, and I've tried to talk to him about this, is that I do believe, and I think many other coaches from the same tree appreciate and revel in the fact that a good running game enhances the opportunity to make those kind of passing plays that you love, that you live for, that look cooler and are more chunk plays. That's the disconnect. I'm looking also at numbers. These are team rushing attempts per game. And here's your top 6. Buffalo, Seattle, Chicago, Carolina, not a very good team, but not an awful team this year, Detroit, and New England. I mean, 5 of those 6 teams are combined 34 and 13, and they all pass well, but they obviously are able to use the running game. And I got the Purple right now, if this number is accurate, at 30th in the National Football League in rushing attempts per game. Now, again, in the fourth quarter, when you're down 14 or 15 points, we all understand you have to throw. End of the first half, you got to throw. But every number, to me, on both sides of the ledger, just scream for something, especially with the fact that you've got, as much as you might like this young quarterback, a guy who's having trouble being very consistent in terms of his accuracy.
Yeah, and I think, you bring it up a little bit there. There is kind of the self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that if you're a good team, you're probably ahead, and you're probably running the ball till the clock late in the game.
Yep.
So some of those things go into it. But, I think it's a fair point, because you see a team like the Rams, and that's obviously the North Star for Kevin O'Connell as much as anybody. It's kind of what would Sean McVay do. The Rams have been more committed to the run in recent years, kind of with a power running game,
no question,
than they previously were. So I think some of that, you've seen the shift for Sean McVay, and I do think that's where O'Connell's a little bit different than some of these coaches from this tree, in the sense that he wants the downfield plays more often. And you see when they have a good quarterback, when they have an experienced quarterback, that has worked. Sam Darnold and Kirk Cousins went to Pro Bowls with it. The problem right now is they don't have that. And that's where this is so fascinating. I wrote about this for Sunday and asked Wes Phillips about it earlier this week, that do you have to balance McCarthy's relative youth with what you want to do? And he said it wouldn't be fair to the rest of the guys if we start pulling back on things, because we expect that this offense is going to work a certain way, and we don't need to dumb it down for the quarterback. The quarterback needs to be able to handle everything that we're putting on his plate. So it becomes this kind of fascinating loop where how much do you change things because of him, and how much do you say, no, this is what we run, and you've got to be up to the task? And McCarthy said, yeah, I understand that I have to do it, and I wouldn't want it any other way, but it is asking a lot, as I think O'Connell admitted, when he is this young and you have this much on his plate. It's the multiple cadences, it's package plays, it's hard counts, it's motions. There's a lot for him to direct at the line, and this is not a quarterback that had to do a lot of that in college. So all of that it's a hard climb to get to where they want him to be, and I think there's a belief that he will take it on, but there's also just, you need time, and that's where this becomes tricky.
You mentioned also in the scouting report the Bears pass rush, which was not, I don't think was particularly effective in the first time when these teams met. Correct. In the opener, and they're down another defensive end, I believe. So, now we may be arguing for, well, that's a reason to throw, because there may be an opportunity that the QB might have some time to throw. That is going to be worth watching as well. What kind of protection the Vikings are going to be able to have for their own QB.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job. I think he only was pressured on about 20% of his dropbacks in that first game, and I think was sacked 3 times, but none of it was on blitzes. They did a good job picking those things up, and that was back when they didn't have Christian Darrisaw. So I would expect that they'll do a decent job protecting him on Sunday. But, yeah, the other piece of this that comes into it is this defense has spent a lot of time on the field this year. And if your run game becomes a way to keep Caleb Williams on the sideline, I don't think that's a bad thing either. It's another way to help your defense when you're without Jonathan Grenard, and that secondary is going to get tested a little bit. So some of these things, it's like I say, it's this fascinating discussion of what's better on a kind of a neutral playing field, and how much do you change things given the fact that it's not neutral. It's
right.
A young quarterback. It's a team that has certain things that it needs to be successful in this particular moment. And there's a lot of ways to skin that cat, I suppose, but it is when you've got a 22-year-old starter who's played in his fifth game, it's a very interesting experiment to see how they go about it. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, again, some of these teams at the top, and you're right, so in terms of running, it can be they got a lead late, and now they're running a lot to hold on to it. But you know as well as I do that several of them, certainly Detroit included, New England included, they like running all along. They like establishing that along the way. I just think they end up being very balanced, and certainly that's the case with the Bears. It's and to me, that's Ben Johnson. That's another guy who has said, as much as he likes the razzle-dazzle and the fancy plays, he has no compunction running it on 2nd and 10. You know, he doesn't. The idea that's got to be a passing down, which I think in KOC's eyes, that's just a passing down. Nothing to talk about here. If it's first and 15 or 2nd and 10, how about a 6-yard run? If it's 2nd and 10 and you get 6, you got 3rd and makeable. And I think that's how a lot of these teams play and help their own cause, because it's hard, man, to sustain drives in this league unless you got, obviously, maybe some of the best 2 or 3 quarterbacks.
It is, and I think, the other piece of it for the Vikings is how well is their offensive line executing things? Are they able to open up gaps?
Right.
Or is it just doing it for the sake of doing it, as I think O'Connell said this week? And, I remember Gary Kubiak, when he was calling plays, there were a lot of 2nd and 10 runs, and everybody back then was, hey, these aren't working. They have to get into different situations. I think a lot of it does come down to, can you win your matchups? If it's 2nd and 10 and you can open holes and get 6 yards consistently, that's an absolutely viable option. It's just this question of execution as much as anything else. And I think it's in this game, in this setting, I think there's going to be opportunities for them to run it, and we will see how much they commit to that. But you can make the argument that would be helpful for them to kind of manage the game flow and give J.J. McCarthy some help. I think there's opportunities to commit to that. We'll see if this is the moment. Like you say, it's going to be the litmus test for it for sure. Yeah,
there's no doubt that the Bears have profited from the easiest part of a last place schedule, and now we'll see. Are they up to it when they play at least slightly better teams, and then the rest of the season as well? But somebody said this to me the other day. I don't know who it was. That here's the thing that's weird. Sometimes you gain, even if it's a little bit of false confidence, you gain confidence. If it's a losing program and you just keep finding ways to win, at some point, if you do it often enough, you stop thinking about who it was against. You start feeling, hey, you know what, we might be pretty good, and that's where it can get a little bit on the dangerous side. So we'll see. Well, I look forward to Sunday, and I know you do too. Thanks as always for the help, my friend. We'll talk next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan.
That's Ben Goessling. StarTribune.com, brought to you by Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. We're going to get a mini Top 5 at 5 before Guardsy files a live report from Eugene, Oregon, setting the scene for Gophers, Oregon Ducks tonight on the Fan. What do we have in the top 5?
We have wild injury news and a Wolves game to preview.
There's a shot.